1989. It was a flashpoint for racial tension in America. There was one song in particular that spoke to the moment and demanded to be heard.
Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power! We got to fight the powers that be!
They were all about creating this chaotic sound with a bunch of samples that really reflected the chaos that America was engulfed in at the time.
The message, the beat, Chuck D's rap, all of that captures a moment in time for people.
Fight the Power was a call to arms. It just ignited a fire in us.
It's that explosion. We're knocking, we're knocking, we're knocking. You're not listening. Bam!
I'm Dometi Pongo, and this is Meaning in Music. It's been listed as one of the best hip-hop songs of all time by Rolling Stone, and recently saw a surge during protests throughout the country this past summer. The lyrics and the sound were so powerful, it was even played on Serbian airwaves in 1991 as a rally cry against the oppressive Milosevic regime.
There's no question that Public Enemy's Fight the Power is the most potent protest song in hip-hop. And part of that had to do with the power and the imagery and the lyrics, but also the fact that it was really the soundtrack to Spike Lee's film, Do the Right Thing.
And then it's amplified by the energy that people give to the song, that it takes on a much larger symbolic role than might have been intended.
So what makes a song an anthem? Not just for a moment or even for a single generation, but one that crosses cultural lines and eras.
Hip-hop is the most verbose art form. What we can do with not only our words, but music being a medium that is like direct to the vein, you know, like dope, just in an emotional sense. It's effective and it's efficient.
When someone is rapping and saying words that you can feel assault you and penetrate you and challenge you, there is a different kind of reaction.
How important is that rallying cry, finding a refrain that the audience can chant and shout in protest moments that makes that song ripe for being kind of the anthem of a movement?
Call and response is so key to protest songs and to anthems, because that's what allows for audience participation, right? If it's just an artist on stage saying the lyrics to a song or saying the hook, it doesn't have the same power. When Kendrick Lamar is saying, we gonna be all right, you know, these are ways for the listener or the audience to participate and actually help create the energy of the song.
All's my life I has to fight. All's my life hard times like, yeah.
Just recognizing that is a sample from The Color Purple.
All my life I had to fight.
The nostalgia is always something that just kind of takes things up a notch.
As soon as you hear, all's my life I had to fight, you remember how she felt when she said that. And so before the song is 2 seconds in and you already like, we've been at this protest all day. We've been talking about police terror all these years. All my life I had to fight.
Literally, that is symbolic of every Black person's experience in America.
It's the simplicity of the lyricism, right? We gonna be all right is speaking to the resilience of Black people. We always make a way out of no way. And this is just a way to remind us of that.
We gon' be all right. We gon' be all right. We gon' be all right. We gon' be all right.
Music has long been a companion to movements. Often, songs unintentionally take on a new meaning to the masses. Aretha Franklin's Respect became an anthem for both civil rights and feminist movements. And Beyonce's Flawless tore through social media as young women used it to celebrate their beauty and identity, demonstrating that celebration can also be a form of protest.
I think songs like You Got Me by The Roots, Brown Skin Lady by Black Star, something that's baked into that is this notion of self-affirmation.
Let's see, you fruitful, beautiful, smart, lovable, huggable, doable like art, suitable to be part of my life. Copper tone, you copyright infringement. Pay you business 10 cents, way back in the day.
Even though a lot of that music was very specifically about Black affirmation, even as an Asian American, I could understand what that was getting at, and it gave me permission to feel that I could think good things about myself too.
Does help us as Black folks to center ourselves in Black joy, which is a really, really important part of our movement. It's what has sustained us through just years and years of trauma and oppression.
Some of the first songs created by Black folks in America were Negro spirituals. Songs with spiritually uplifting and politically subversive themes sung by enslaved African people.
It's really kind of the first level protest songs, so that they're not just rooted in Christianity or biblical texts. There are messages encoded in them to talk about freedom.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water.
These lyrics are a guide, signaling to enslaved people to go by the waterway where dogs couldn't pick up their scent and cross over into freedom. One of the pillars of hip hop is the piece about speaking to the struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How has hip hop been used in this particular way, and what is it about the art form that lends itself to that use?
I think hip hop illuminates the everyday, which I think it includes struggle, but it also includes joy and celebration and heartache and fighting and everything.
The reason hip hop is such a natural and potent vehicle for protest is partly because it was born out of injustice in 1970s Bronx, New York, where even after the Civil Rights Act was passed, Black and Latino areas were still experiencing poverty and severe inequities.
People are still disenfranchised, feel not empowered, their communities aren't changing, and they're left to fend for themselves. And as anything, and particularly with African American culture, you always make a way out of no way.
You saw very few examples of young Black and brown people having a voice, a place in American culture which was defined by them, for them. And that's what hip hop was about, was transforming the American cultural landscape by bringing a new narrative, set of narratives to the table about life, growing up Black or brown in America.
Talking about your block, or your zip code, or your area code is a common theme in hip hop. There's pride in where you're from, but it's also a way to blast out to the world what's going on in your hood.
One way of looking at hip hop is a very distinctive African American expression, but it's always been a genre that borrows and is not afraid to experiment. And so those elements of being able to mix is kind of one of those abilities for hip hop to transcend and to percolate out.
That ingenuity and experimental spirit inherent in hip hop is why we see it flourishing all around the world, often in areas that face a similar oppression and a lack of resources.
So scarcity is an indigenous aesthetic because wastefulness is not an indigenous value.
And hip hop is all about
the cycle and reuse and recycling, yeah.
Native or indigenous communities have been victims of horrific traumas across the globe that still continue today. Indigenous rappers like Frank Wallen, Angel Hayes, and others have tapped into hip hop to tell the stories of their people.
What made hip hop so relatable, to us as natives was, the struggle. Like when back in the day when I heard Public Enemy, it was just like, yo, man, these guys are talking about us, They were going through their struggles with the inner cities, and so us on the reservation, like the inner city ghettos and reservation was similar. And so when they spoke about that struggle, man, we could relate really easy.
How has hip hop helped Native American musicians reframe what Native American identity looks like? And speaking candidly, you've got these regressive stereotypes like the stoic Native American, this archetype.
Whether it be Native North Americans or Papua New Guinea, in any indigenous society, we have, and it's this very unfortunate legacy from anthropology, framing them in a particular way. Embracing hip hop is a way of people to say, the stereotypes. I'm going to show you what I really am. You think you know, but you don't know.
Native American artists have found an ally in hip-hop since its inception. And in 2016, it leveraged the art form to protect sacred land and water in one of the most historic stands against the US government in recent history, the Dakota Access Pipeline, or better known as #NoDapple.
It was a gathering of unity, of everybody, all races, all religions, all backgrounds. They were all coming together to fight for this element, this water, this clean water.
And I said, I want to create an anthem that speaks to indigenous people around the world. It was about uplifting, but also being proud of where you come from and keeping your head up and stand up for, for equal rights, stand up against the injustice, stand up against economic imperialism, stand up against that dapple.
They wanted me to rap in the Apsalagat language, my tribal language. And so I was like, yo, man, that's huge for me.
I was like, man, do it in your native tongue. Let's showcase the beauty of that and stay in Superman mode.
Ultimately, the Dakota Access Pipeline was built and shut down in 2020 pending environmental approval. But Native peoples and marginalized communities around the world continue to fight to be heard. For them, hip-hop is an open source platform, available to anyone from any background, used to wield activism as much as it's used for celebration.
This is a toolbox that you can use to tell your own story, right? And reconnect and bring something new, because it's like a formula that allows you to put infinite numbers into it and it always comes up with a different result.
Hip-hop was created to be accessible, expansive, and adaptable. And you don't need much more than a good beat and good lyrics to tell your story.
It's also the pulse of culture, you know what I'm saying? From the youth here to Liberia and South Africa and Thailand and Palestine. If the youth are always the base of any movement, then hip-hop is the perfect vehicle because that's what the youth are listening to.
It mushroomed into something big, it's dominated the commercial marketplace. But at its heart, it's about the people. It's about them speaking truth to power, commenting on the world around them, and finding some kind of agency in dealing with that.